Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to everyone all over the world who's come to join the Unibuddy conference. And hi to all my buddies out there. My name is Josh, and I'm here with Elliot. And we're going to do a Q&A style workshop to discuss what universities and startups can learn from each other. I've spent the last 15 years of my career all in the startup world. It began with my last year at uni, where I co-founded a digital music service with three of my best mates. And most recently, it's been at Unibuddy, where I joined this amazing team as head of operations in January. And just in the last 8 months, we've gone from 35 people to 85 people. I'm thrilled to be joined by Elliot, who's the head of UK student recruitment and outreach at the University of Leicester. He spent the last 11 years in higher ed, and with the last 7 years at Leicester, where him and his team recently won the HelloA Best Practice Award for Marketing and Communications in January of this year. We're going to structure our talk around three main themes to get the conversation going. The first is around how you can manage for innovation versus efficiency, how and when to do one versus the other. The second is going to be around data and show me the data, as we like to say here at Unibuddy, and ways that you can create and embed a more data-driven culture. And third is the idea as to how you can flatten your organization and empower your teams to run more like their own business. But we do have one startup guy and one higher ed guy, so we could end up talking about just one thing the entire time or pivoting within the first 5 minutes. And not talking about any of what I just mentioned. So we really want this to be interactive. We want you guys to help determine where this goes and take full advantage of this virtual format. We encourage you to participate throughout. We're going to be keeping a close eye on the feed for follow-up questions. And we're also going to have at least 5 minutes kind of at the end of each theme or each section where we'll take your questions. So with that said, let's jump in with theme number one, which is, am I managing for efficiency when I should be managing for innovation? And I'm going to start with a question for you, Elliot. Hello and welcome. Elliot, what comes to mind when you hear that question about whether you and your team are managing for efficiency versus innovation?
It's a good first question, and I just wanted to say thanks again for having me on the conference. It's a pleasure to be here. So yeah, thank you very much. I think in terms of the kind of the question you've set in terms of managing for efficiency versus or with managing for innovation, the one thing that always strikes me within universities and particularly at Leicester where I work is it's trying to find that balance. It's trying to find time, resource, energy to be innovative. Whilst also trying to be as kind of efficient as possible. I think I've worked, as you said in my lovely intro, thank you for that. I've worked in HE for about 11 years with 7 at Leicester. And actually I've seen over the last 8 months or so, way more innovation in the sector than I've seen in the previous probably 11 years, all in a really tight space of time, because we've kind of had to, as a sector, as a university with my Leicester hat on, but also as a sector. We've had to make quite drastic changes, and it's funny what you can get done when you have to do stuff. So I think if you were to speak to colleagues at universities across the country to try and cast their minds back to kind of February-ish, and if you said pre-coronavirus, if you'd ask the question, right, do you think in 8 months' time you'd be able to launch a whole suite of virtual events, you'd be able to get your academics on board, you'd be able to not run any physical events on campus, and does that sound good? You probably would have got people looking at you a bit funny and thinking, are you okay? So it's interesting where we're at now. I think in terms of managing my team and managing teams within universities, I think we've previously got in a mindset where it's a very cyclical process. So it's easy to try and just kind of regurgitate stuff that's worked in previous years, so it's worth doing again, rather than looking at it from a kind of innovation point of view and actually thinking, yes, it worked really well, but is it fit for purpose now? Whereas the kind of where we're in now, it's very much right. Things are evolving all the time. So you have to be continually innovating. Student behavior is changing. We saw kind of, if you, again, kind of April time virtual events and things like that was really good. Engagement was really strong. But speaking to colleagues at universities across the UK sector now, it seems like the virtual event fatigue has already set in amongst students, which is a bit of a worry, given that's kind of all we've got at the moment. So again, it's then now thinking, right, as a sector, but also with my Leicester hat on, where do we go from here? We can't run anything really in person, but also if virtual events aren't what the students are demanding now, where do we find that balance? Where do we go from here? So the efficiency point's a really hard one, because the university is notoriously inefficient, I think, and that's where I guess we can learn from startups. So I always try and bring in processes where we can use things like using Microsoft Teams has helped with certain things. It's not helped in other things. So yeah, it's I guess going back to the question, it's trying to find a balance. I'm not sure I've cracked it. I'm not sure anyone's cracked it greatly, but also trying to kind of manage upwards. And actually, if we are being tasked with being innovative, giving us a bit of time, a bit of headspace, a bit of resource, and opportunities to fail, because not everything's going to work.
Gotcha. And how do you think you could almost replicate what's happened with COVID-19 and the pandemic, obviously without COVID-19 and the pandemic, in the sense of creating ways to foster innovation on a more consistent basis, to manage for innovation on a more consistent basis, where you're not waiting for it to come externally, but you're driving it internally?
Good question. I think that's where almost it's using kind of what you've got, your resources, and actually seeing if you're making the most out of it is probably one area where you can kind of balance efficiency and innovation. So with things like, for example, using Unibuddy as a university, there are probably clients that you've got out there that are using it just for the peer-to-peer chat bit. Whereas I guess the approach we've taken at Leicester is we've invested in the product. So actually let's make as much as we can of it across the whole kind of life cycle. And particularly at the moment, using student voice is really, really key. So that's almost doing a little bit of an internal kind of audit of what you've already got, what you've already spent money on. And actually just assessing, are we maximizing what we're doing with whatever that might be. I think in terms of managing a team that's fairly small at university, I'm not sure there's much more time we can give at the moment to kind of almost having a new ideas approach or new ideas team, a growth team, that sort of thing. And actually, again, I think when we've spoken before, having a more startup approach there might be something that we can do. And I think, have you got kind of ideas of how that could work?
Yeah, I mean, I think to kind of carry on with that thread, one thing that we talked about earlier would be to consider kind of how you can approach these challenges more from the inside out. Obviously, we all have constrained resources, but starting with, what makes Leicester unique, what's special about its purpose, its mission and vision, and how that can then empower your teams to use that North Star to spark creativity and innovation. And what I guess I mean by that, to give an example from Unibuddy, is, we're a B2B SaaS company, right? And what that really means is that we're a software company that sells software to businesses versus individual customers. But at Unibuddy, our raison d'etre is to help people make better decisions through shared human experiences. And our mission is about empowering, over the next 5 years, 10 million students to make the right choice for higher education. So what that means for us is, like, when we think about our strategies, we're trying not just to copy and paste the standard playbooks that you can read everywhere about, how B2B SaaS companies go from, 0 to $1 billion, right? We're really actively trying to be a mission-driven company. So that means in practice, we're actively recruiting from the higher education sector. And as you guys know, for roles across our commercial and tech teams, we have salespeople who we've taken from university admissions departments who were never salespeople before. Same with CS. And so maybe one way to think about it from the university standpoint is, how can you guys, increase your diversity pool in terms of who you're bringing in? Maybe it's almost a flip, right? You think about bringing people from tech companies or B2B SaaS companies to drive a different mindset. So it's not necessarily you need a budget or this whole huge project, but that you're kind of bringing in the people that will
I think
kind
that's
of drive
really that's a really good point. I think from being a hiring manager within an institution and speaking to other hiring managers across other institutions, and just sort of kind of speaking to people across the sector, I'd say that particularly university recruitment, admissions, that sort of area, marketing to an extent as well, but more so admissions and recruitment, is very much people move around universities rather than lots of recruitment going on from outside the sector inwards. I don't think university generally is very good at looking at for inspiration outside the sector. It's quite an insular thing. So I think that's a really, really valid point. I think that's something from our discussions previously I'm going to take on board when looking at hiring new staff, but also something that we can definitely learn from a startup world, and something universities could take forward.
Yeah, I mean, to that end, like, what do you think would happen in a hypothetical if, you said, team, here's a 25K or 50K budget, you've got 6 months, your objective is to find one or more new channels that increase your yield by, X percentage. What do you think would happen? Or, how could you potentially foresee that working for you guys?
I think first of all, they think it was Christmas if I gave them that much money. So that'd be a nice Christmas present.
I didn't know what number to pick, Elliot. I didn't know what would be appropriate, so I tried to
the more the merrier. So I think actually one of the things that I've tried to bring in at Leicester a little bit, particularly since lockdown, is actually taking more of a whole kind of team approach. So rather than operating in kind of silos across standard recruitment and widening participation, particularly, is trying to actually have a whole team approach to things that have budgets attributed to them. So we're fulfilling our recruitment aims, but also there is the kind of underarching widening access support things to it as well. So setting the team right, I think, is really important, but also then having clear objectives from the start. So you've got the main objective that you set of increasing yield by whatever X, but actually within that, what else can we learn from trying to get there? An example that we had at Leicester over the summer was our summer school, digital summer school, which obviously the objective was to have a lot of people at our summer school. That's the standard university objective of more bookings for stuff. But actually within that, what we did in terms of learning from the outset was actually, okay, so within the program construction, for the first time in forever, we've actually looked at, okay, so how do students engage online? Why are we let's not try and replicate what they receive in person. And what we learned from that, the program was really strong. Not everyone enjoyed all of it, but that's okay, that's fine. But what we learned was actually the amount of live content in any one day for a 17, 18-year-old student from certain backgrounds was about this, because that's what we saw people engaging with, was about 2 to 3 hours, for example. We didn't know that before. We had no idea of that before. But we only really got that from putting on events that were almost a bit too long. So breaking down things into key KPIs, what you're trying to get out of said thing. Yes, you've got your main objective, but actually there are so many factors that could contribute to that being a success or not, particularly in the world we're in at the moment. So having clear KPIs, actually identifying why something didn't work and being honest with yourselves, not trying to cover stuff up. There are some things we would undoubtedly change if we move forward with that type of thing again, but there are some things that we know worked really, really well, and we've actually taken that and embedded across other bits of the team. So particularly the live content, particularly the approach to digital stuff, the working with certain types of students, and trying to share that learning, share those experiences with people across the wider team as well. So within our international recruitment, within our marketing side, so our events, our kind of open days sit outside of our team. So actually, but we can take some of those learnings that we learned and pass them on, and having a bit more of a sharing culture. So yes, we had our own objective, and if this hypothetical project had the budget attributed, I'm sure our managers would want to see, if we didn't get there, why didn't we get there? But what can we take from that for a future project?
And I'm gonna kind of borrow from a question I'm seeing in the chat right now for you. But do you have like working groups or time set aside for kind of how you guys brainstorm or try to come up with new ideas, or does it just kind of happen organically? How do you guys do it at Leicester?
We kind of go down the less so working group, more kind of brief project team, regular meetings, kickoff meeting where we decide kind of what are our aims of whatever it might be, and if we can bring in people from across the kind of division or the department to support, whether it's might be getting people on board from the CRM side of things early on, or branding or campaigns or whatever.
So not like a sushi bar or lots of free food like startups do. No, none of that.
I mean, that would be good. But yeah, unfortunately, that's again another key learning I think universities should take away from startups is more sushi bars. But no, it's still a bit more formal, I think, than that. It's less so a kind of big workshop. It's more we know what roughly we need to we know what the project should be. It's not even a case of going into a room and thinking, okay, so what can we do about this? It's actually right. We've got an idea. Let's bring people together and have a clear kind of tracker. That's something we brought in at Leicester over the last year or so, which worked quite well actually. So in terms of accountability, everyone loves a Gantt chart, right? So that type of approach. It's not the it doesn't solve everything. I think it's not worked for some things. It's worked really well for other things.
Yeah.
So yes, it is a challenge, but I think rather than going to people at the end of stuff and saying, hey, can we now send this out as an email to people? Why don't we bring in those people that do that early on in the project, so they can actually suggest, well, why don't you send it a bit earlier? Why don't you do it by text? That sort of stuff is also quite key.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, and just to be clear, Unibuddy does not have a sushi bar or anything close to that.
Not yet, anyway.
No, definitely not. Maybe I don't see too many questions, more questions on the chat, but maybe kind of do a little role reversal. What lessons do you think startups could maybe learn from universities? When maybe is the process or managing for efficiency a good thing, and how you guys do it well, and maybe any lessons that startups could learn?
Good question. I think the best type of process I think that I see at universities, and I'm not actually heavily involved in it, is probably our admissions process, to be honest. I think given the amount of applications, the amount of information involved in applications, and then the amount of actual applications as well, to have an efficient process where students are communicated with, all the systems are working in tune, there aren't major errors being done all the time in terms of wrong offers or wrong rejections, that type of thing. So the accuracy is very important. And actually, if you take a step back and think, actually, this is like across the sector, I don't know, 650,000 applications a year, and you don't hear really of many issues hugely. I mean, turnaround time is sometimes mentioned at some universities, or we could do more applications. Let's be honest. But actually, if you think of how much information is involved in that, and the reliability of the process, I think it's really, really impressive. And I'm not sure it gets the credit it deserves, actually. So one thing I think, I think that's probably the main area in terms of dealing with. I mean, you guys deal with a lot of student information, but also being able to kind of process that, have the right systems, be able to share that with relevant colleagues across a massive organization. I guess startups, you don't necessarily have to do that, or do you? Do you share with colleagues externally, or how does that work?
Well, I'm just going to use a question, if you don't mind, Elliot, from that I think is directly related to this from Monica, which is, she recently had to go through the application prospect as a prospective student, and it was a real eye opener for her. And she was asking you if you ever get the chance, or anyone from your team ever gets the chance, to put themselves in the shoes of the student and actually go through that application process, or maybe even from the position of an admissions officer who's reviewing all those applications, and maybe that's in and of itself just a good lesson about how to improve those processes.
Yeah, it's actually that point comes at quite a good time. We had a discussion in our management group the other day, and actually over kind of, I think, December and January, we're going to implement like an all department decision day, which sounds exciting. So we're kind of dropping all tools and having everyone processing applications or buddying up with relevant admissions colleagues, so that people in my team, in terms of UK recruitment or outreach, or our international team, or our kind of global operations team, actually get stuck into the system. Because the only exposure we really have to the system is over clearing normally, because again we're heavily involved in that. But in terms of, again, our knowledge base of then how the process works from we still don't see it from a student point of view. We haven't got to that level of making an application. But it's a good idea. But I'm actually quite weirdly excited for the team to be involved in the decision day, or decision days this year. And I think we'll start with our undergraduate qualifications and then kind of broaden out to postgraduate, which will be for us. Our team hasn't had a massive involvement in postgraduate recruitment before. It's kind of been in there since February for UK side of things, but actually I don't see any reason why not. So yeah, I think we can learn a lot from that. We learn a lot over clearing as a really short example as to how students expect to be treated. So actually seeing that earlier in the cycle will be quite interesting.
Yeah, I think it's something we all could honestly do better. I mean, I think at Unibuddy too, I think of our kind of onboarding process for new buddies, as we call them, new employees, and how we could really do a better job of as part of that process. But even once you have been here for a year or however long, making sure that you continually kind of refresh what it's like to be a prospective student using the Unibuddy platform, being a university using the Unibuddy platform. And when people see that, with fresh eyes, I think a lot of good ideas and a lot of innovative ideas can come out of that as well. So
just in terms of actually the point you mentioned there about inductions, how have you found inducting new staff virtually? Have you found any challenges or anything that actually works really well?
Yeah, I mean, so I think it's definitely had its challenges. I think overall, we feel like we're doing a good job. We survey pretty heavily about it because honestly, we were quite concerned about how it would affect new buddies coming in and their ability to ingrain themselves in their team and get a wider sense of what's going on at the company and collaboration. So I think, there are certain things that we've done that are working well in terms of really making sure that new buddies are paired up with someone to kind of, mentor them. Also, we do these kind of what we call donuts or coffees that happen kind of cross collaboration between teams where they get to meet new people. But, I think in terms of where it's been a real eye opener for us is we have 3 offices across 3 different continents, in the US and the UK and India. And I think it really created a lot of empathy for people here at the UK office to feel what it was like to not be in the main office and to be in the US and the India office, and what that's like to be remote in that sense. And so I think in that way, it's really taught us a lot of valuable lessons about how we need to improve our communications and improve the connections between the offices. Even when, hopefully sooner rather than later, we go back to something that resembles more normal, that we have to kind of take those lessons with us. So yeah, so I think it's really shown us a lot in that way.
Yeah, no, we've thankfully we've actually not had to do, within my team, I've not had to do many, if any, inductions since lockdown. So I've not really had the experience of it. But I think one thing I'm finding working quite well for almost kind of bigger picture stuff, and I think actually inductions probably fall into this mold, is trying to get together as a team. We're trying to do it kind of either monthly or as maybe every 3 weeks or so, just to kind of go to have the easier conversations that don't really work across teams. So whether it's kind of thinking where do we want to go in 2022 or about a kind of a brand new event or brand new activity we want to do, we're finding actually some of those are actually easier in person. I mean, obviously we're having to abide by restrictions and everything, but if we can, that's slowly trying to transition back to seeing people is it kind of seems to be working so far, touch wood.
Cool. Well, why don't we move on to the next section around data. So this is really about ways that that universities and startups can create and embed a data-driven culture. And just kind of want to start off with maybe a high-level question for you about where the key areas are where you feel like you're lacking data, you know, especially in the recruitment area. Where do you wish you had more data, better data that you think would make a big impact on your team?
I think it's less so around lacking the actual data. It's more so lacking the data at the most crucial time. I always find at universities, given the kind of weird cycles we work in, we often receive the data that is of kind of most relevance to us quite late after the activity that it's responsible for. So if you take kind of big things like UCAS fairs, big recruitment exhibitions, or even some of our lower level kind of school and college activities, so talks, fairs, etc. Normally, most of the target audience there are sometimes at most like 18 months away from starting university. So actually seeing how successful they are as a pure recruitment tool can often take 18 months, and actually in that time you've had the next cycle of those said things already. So to make any changes, if you based your success on how successful they are at converting students to firm or enrollments, then actually you're always going to lack the data at the time you want to see if it's successful. Or you just have to make sure everyone is aware that's involved and is maybe above you, that data won't be available for a solid kind of 18 months afterwards. So what we've tried to do is,
do you have visibility into like at least the steps on the journey for the student more in real time, or does kind of the whole journey not really come to you in terms of the data till 18 months later?
I'd say it's better than it was. We're getting into more of a mindset and within the team at Leicester, within the broader team, to have a more, not necessarily standardized, but more consistent types of reports done based on the kind of lead source and where they come into the kind of either the CRM database or our higher education access tracker. So it's getting there. It's not perfect, but it's better than it was. And I think actually understanding, okay, so what's the main goal of going to exhibitions? It's probably to try and get someone to book onto something, whatever your next thing is, probably an open day or virtual event or whatever it might be. Because from there, you know, there's what you're trying to do at an open day is get them to apply. They probably won't apply just because they met you at a virtual fair, but if you can nudge them along the way to where you want them to go, then it's okay. But obviously taking into consideration at that stage a kind of random virtual event for them or a random virtual exhibition, those leads are really, really cold. So trying to set relevant objectives is really, really key there. I think in terms of other data sets, universities have a lot of data themselves. I always find at Leicester we have so many reports. It's often which the information that you're looking for is normally in them. You just need to try and fish out which one it is. And I think we probably could be better at sharing that knowledge across, particularly our academic community, to try and get more buy-in to why certain decisions are being made, whether that's running additional events or spending marketing campaign money on, I don't know, a certain geography. We kind of keep those decisions in-house, and I'd be surprised if that's different at other universities. I think that tends to be a standard thing. I think from my side, looking at managing the team, I've tried to look over the last 18 months or so, if we don't have the data and actually other organizations do that can support what we're trying to do, so whether it is Unibuddy, whether it's other providers that we use for certain things, don't be afraid to invest in that. Make strong business cases. If you haven't got that external data, or you haven't got that external product or service, actually, are you better off spending your money on that than kind of random activity over here that you're hoping will work? And kind of that seems to work quite well. So we use quite a few different partners, providers, etc.
Do you think there's appetite at Leicester or other universities for really creating that sort of function within the university? Something so in software startups, over the last 10, 15 years, there's really been this whole function that's created around, we call it revenue operations, but it's really an operational function that that's cross-functional, that goes across teams. That's job really is to, as a org, is to make sure that the data is first clean coming in, organizing it, and then pulling out insights and spreading those insights across the different commercial teams. But the idea being is that you really need someone to own that, because if it just sits within recruitment versus admissions versus marketing, it doesn't get kind of shared the way it does. I mean, could you see universities wanting to move in that sort of direction, or at least having some appetite to test something like that out?
I think moving in that direction is probably the right phrase, because I think universities kind of twigged that data was king a lot later than a lot of other people. So it's still in the infancy, I would say, in terms of compared to other organizations within higher ed. I think universities are actually still a little bit behind in terms of actually acknowledging that there is so much data within the sector that they could use both internally and externally. So slowly getting there and actually moving more of their resource into the kind of big data, the insights, the analytics, but then also making that data, idiot-proof's the wrong word, what am I looking for? It's kind of shareable to those that aren't particularly interested in data. There's an actual word, I can't think what it is. But that type of approach, I think they're definitely moving more towards. But again, any then services that might be looking to work with universities, I'd encourage them to kind of look at making it fairly easy to use. Data is kind of complicated, so trying to break it down to fairly layman's terms is quite important. Do you find as Unibuddy you kind of make use of either external data sets or kind of big data sets, or is it all kind of generated from what within your own platform? I guess how students are using it, how universities are using it.
Yeah. I mean, where we're at in our journey, we use external data sets, or we're just starting to, I should say, is probably more accurate, but they're really to supplement our first party data and not to replace it. And by first party data, I mean the own data that we generate by our own customers. And to give you an example of that, for example, like we're not going out and buying lists, right, that tell us who are the top 100 universities in a given target market. We're of course looking at all the universities in that market, but then we're using our own data, our own lessons to tell us which types of universities are the most strategic to us and why. But then what we're excited to be, just in the early stages of doing is to then layer data sets on top of that would, give us potentially a lot more insight or reveal patterns. So for instance, putting a layer on top of that of financial aid and understanding how different universities are using financial aid and how much students are getting from those universities, or the makeup of their international students versus domestic students. So there's lots of layers that we can, or, average tuition size, or, there's lots of different layers that we can then start adding on. And that might reveal connections between our customers that allow us to either build better products, market to them in a more relevant way, sell to them in a more relevant way. So that's kind of how we look at data is, our external data is a boost.
And do you find, given again the size of Unibuddy, I think you mentioned these 85 employees, something like that. Do you find that, or do you aim to share as much data as you can across all 85 employees, so kind of everyone is aware, or is it a question of kind of sending the relevant data sets to the relevant teams, whether it's customer success or engineering or whatever it might be?
Yeah, I mean, as a general rule, we try to be as transparent as possible with all of our data, and that goes from the very top of how many customers do we have, what's our revenue, to more granular data about customers. I think that's definitely something that all companies, startups included, and Unibuddy included, wish that we could do better. But we're constantly trying to connect things back to people. So for instance, in our most recent quarterly meeting, we had a whole section, about a third of the meeting, about customer stories, and how customers are using the Unibuddy platform. And that's so, people in our engineering team and across the organization can understand what they're building and how it has impact. And sometimes that's more anecdotal, although that can still be data. And sometimes that's very data driven in terms of number of conversations, or we're trying to pull insights in terms of what types of conversations are the most popular, or what students are talking about. So it's something that I think, as a general rule, we want to share it as much as possible, because it connects the whole story for everyone in the organization, and it gives both motivation and, I think, fuel for innovation as well.
I think that's what the challenge universities face, is that it's almost just the size of some of the organizations. They are kind of mammoth employee numbers, and having the it's not even necessarily wanting the transparency, it's having the ability to be able to share that and getting people on board with it. I think we tend to find quite tricky. But it's interesting that I think trying where possible to do that is probably something that we can learn.
What in particular is kind of a blocker or tricky about it when you try to share the data across different organizations?
I guess it's the platform that it's trying to use. That I don't think we've practiced it. Most universities, and including ourselves at Leicester, have our kind of own internal use of things like SharePoint and internal website kind of stuff. But it's I guess getting people to buy into why data is really important is probably the first point, because I think, again, universities are notoriously slow to take things up. So actually, why are we presenting this data? What are we hoping to learn from it? I don't think we've been great at. So I think it's the kind of platform to make it make sense, but then also the follow-up stuff, whether that is how we're then embedding that learning into our recruitment campaigns or stuff like that. It's tough.
I think it's hard to get people in any organization to kind of fully buy into something by just looking at a dashboard or reading a report or a spreadsheet. And so I think, one thing is you gotta kind of tell the story behind it. And I think, one idea might be that we do a lot at startups, and at Unibuddy in particular, is show and tells. And we have show and tells across, thank you, Ian. We have show and tells across our different organizations. So it's a way to share data and share knowledge about different parts of our customer journey. And that's a lot more interesting, and I think engaging and impactful for people to understand why the data is important than everyone go look at this dashboard sort of thing.
I think that last point is what universities do. Hey, here's some data. There you go. End of story. So no, that's a really important point, I think, about the show and tell side of things. I think we could learn a lot from that.
Yeah, great. Let's see here. Maybe we move to the next session. We have about 10-15 minutes left. By session, I mean theme. So the third theme we have is how to potentially flatten your organization in order to empower teams to kind of be their own business, be their own CEO sort of thing, and how that can drive innovation.
Yeah, I have a question for you on this.
Okay, yeah, jump in, please. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, from working in universities for a fair number of years, you get really used to them being weirdly hierarchical for a lot of things. For some things, not at all, but then for a lot of the time, it's kind of very, very based on hierarchy, which I don't think is particularly healthy. So just in terms of your experience of working, I guess, both at Unibuddy and in other startups as well, how do you find that transfers to startups? Is it similarly hierarchical? Is it completely different? What would you say universities could learn on that particular point about breaking those down?
Well, I mean, I think it's fair to say I have no experience in this at all. I've never worked in very hierarchical organizations. So maybe this is you shouldn't listen to anything that comes out of my mouth here. But I will maybe say I will say kind of what I do think works well at startups to break down hierarchy and allow people to feel empowered that they can make their own decisions and drive things forward the way they think is best based on their expertise. And I don't want to go on too long and give a professorial answer, but I mean, I think one thing that works really well is a goal setting framework called objectives and key results, OKRs for short. I know people at Unibuddy, my buddies, will shudder hearing these because we do them every quarter. And it's not necessarily everyone's favorite thing to do, but I think they work really well in terms of aligning different teams up and down and across the organization. And basically, it just very briefly, it's a waterfall system that very simply you set an objective, objective X, that you want to be measured by key results A, B, and C. And it was, I think, started by Intel a while back, and now it's used by Google and all those big companies. But a great example of this at Unibuddy would be we set an objective, right? Like improve buddy well-being by creating a more, and buddies, by the way, are employees. So improve employee well-being by creating a more supportive, connected, and transparent environment where we're all inspired to do our best work. And this is actually an objective that the ops and people team has pretty much every single quarter. And we measure that. So the key results for that objective are maintaining an employee satisfaction of our net promoter score of 50 plus, and maintaining a 95% employee retention rate. So that's how we measure whether we're doing a good job of creating that sort of environment. Mm-hmm. And what this does is this allows our people team in the ops org the room to come up with their own initiatives and experiments to achieve these key results. And it can remove a lot of, I think, maybe unnecessary kind of oversight and over planning and micromanagement. And so, you know, they can come up with great ideas for virtual socials or for how to connect to 3 different offices or for new benefits that they can give our team. And it's just simply, you know, measured by that key result. Is it driving that key result that we believe is a very good indication of whether we're achieving that objective? So, yeah, that's one way we do it. And just one other insight on that is we actually learned that we need to actually share that objective across our different teams, and that it wasn't just something that the people and ops team should be responsible for, but each team, sales, CS, tech, should all have that objective and key result too as part of what they want to achieve on a quarterly basis, and come up with their own initiatives to achieve those key results. And that way you can really spread that throughout the organization. Could you ever see something like that working at universities or something to that effect?
I like the last point you mentioned there about actually thinking about it within the different teams at university. So yes, you could have an overarching objective, and I think well-being is at the forefront of everyone's mind. And I know universities are seemingly, again, speaking to colleagues at different universities, are trying more activity-based stuff or reducing certain activity to help with well-being, but it's less objective based. It's more, okay, we know people are having a lot of screen time, so we're going to do less screen time. But it's not, I don't think that kind of satisfaction, the retention rate, there isn't that measurable bit, which I think is important. But I think that, as I said, that last point you mentioned about, so the university has this objective, and let's say it was improve employee well-being by creating more supportive, etc. I don't think, and again, I feel free, university colleagues on the workshop, to shout me down, but I don't think we are that good at then relating that to our own team. So actually thinking, okay, so within student recruitment or within outreach or within admissions, what does that actually mean? And having the strength to go, okay, so within our own area, that means this, and then having set key results to then monitor against, and then allowing the team, or whether the management structure, or again going back to hierarchy, or the rest of the team, to come up with ideas on, okay, so yeah, we do want to improve our employee satisfaction within this team. How do we do that? I don't think we're good at it at the moment. So that's definitely a lesson I'm going to take away.
Yeah, and I think it's another way also to kind of tie it all back to how you can promote more innovation in your company, because the objective can be that sort of, we want to discover a new channel for how we recruit students, right? And the key results can just be launch 2 new tests to do that. And so it allows for failure, right? Because the key result isn't around more bookings, right, for something. The key result is really around driving innovation and pushing your team to test new things. And we do that exactly at Unibuddy when we're trying to launch new products. We set an objective around what the experiences that we're hoping to drive for our customers, and key results around launching things that we think are going to achieve that or enhance that.
Yeah, I think with the objectives point of view, I think one of the things, particularly in a recruitment and I guess marketing sphere as well, one of the things I see a lot, and I'm guilty of this myself, is just setting objectives where it's basically just increased by X, whatever said thing is, whether it's bookings, whether it's activities, whether it's applications, whether it's enrollments, whatever it might be. They tend to be more around that than in some ways reduce doing things by X, or letting something go by a certain time frame, or completely refreshing something, or removing from the portfolio, whatever it could be. Yeah, we need to, I think we as universities could be much stronger at doing that, rather than just focusing on increase more all the time. then everyone just gets really tired.
Yeah.
One question I had is a little bit off topic, but we've got a bit of time.
Yeah, I think we have about 10 minutes or so. Yeah.
Given where we are now in terms of doing virtual conferences and working at home and what coronavirus has brought, what from a startup point of view, what's the main thing that you've learned that you didn't know before? It's obviously very different times, but is there any key kind of takeaway that you think that we used to share? What was it that you feel like now that you didn't know before, but mainly because of what we're all involved in?
That's a good question. I think one of the main things that COVID-19 and this pandemic has taught me, I won't maybe speak for all of Unibuddy, but I think me and a lot of us at Unibuddy is at startups, the mentality is always, we can innovate, we can pivot, we can do something else to solve this problem, right? We just have to kind of collect the data or put our minds to it, or put another, minimum viable product out there and test and we'll figure that out. And I think what COVID has been a good reminder of in the pandemic, and obviously there's not much that's good about the pandemic, but what it has been for us is a reminder that there are some things that you just can't do that with, and that are something that are just a kind of consistent challenge that you're going to have to be working on, and you're never quite going to solve. And I think in particular, the well-being of our employees, the mental health of our employees is one of those. And I think it's a reminder of that, that's something that we probably weren't doing a good enough job and paying enough attention to before COVID. And we're doing our best to provide our employees support, to make sure that they're taking time off, even giving company-wide extra days off. We're trying to provide more mental health support, whether that's telehealth and things like that. But that's not, there's no solving it, right? There's no, we've arrived sort of thing. We've hit this KPI sort of thing. And I think that's a really good lesson for us as a startup, that there are things like that we just need to keep working on and improving on, and that we're never going to necessarily just achieve that key result.
I think from a university point of view, obviously we've talked a little bit so far on how we're very different, and have some similarities, but mostly differences. But actually, that's the one thing that I think brings both massive organisations like universities and startups like Unibuddy kind of together, is that kind of employee well-being in a pandemic, which I didn't really have when I got into this role. I didn't really think I'd have to hugely think about the pandemic side of things. But what I've definitely learned about the team is, yes, you can continually try and push for more stuff, productivity, etc. But actually, it comes to a point when well-being really needs to be top in terms of priority. So it's fair. Again, we've only really done little things in terms of having a digital detox. So an hour off. I've given the team an hour off each week to do something new. Basically, the only thing I said was, don't go and do something you haven't done before, or try something new. Whether that's learn a new thing, learn a new skill, or just the only thing it can't involve is a screen. Which is remarkable how much then you come back and people say, loads of things I didn't really realize involved a screen now involve a screen. So that's I guess something we're trying to do as well. So I think that's the common goal we have is that, and I guess it's how we continue to develop that is a real, I guess, a challenge. The longer this goes on, not something we've completely cracked.
Yeah, and while we're in the middle of it, there's we talked about this previously with my team. There until life returns to some sort of semblance of normality, work becomes our kind of main identity in a lot of ways, and we're certainly fortunate to have that work. But without those other pieces of our identity, without our friends, our family, being able to travel, do different hobbies, all those sorts of things. It's something that we just kind of have to collectively come together and be okay with it not being okay. And that's, I think, what we're trying to espouse at Unibuddy. And I think the other lesson that we've learned is just trying to be really transparent with information and not pretending that, we have some answer to whether it's challenges with COVID or other challenges. I mean, I think that's something that it's taught us across what we're doing, is that when we're trying something new, or we're asking people to do things that's something new, like, we want to be transparent about, we don't know if this is going to work. We don't know if this is, gonna help or not, but we want your feedback, and, we want you to trust that we're giving you all the information that we have about why we're doing what we're doing.
No, I think that's a really valid point. I think, and that's something that we've been able to foster a little bit more at the University of Leicester recently. It's been more, we don't really know if this is going to work or not, whatever that might be. But if it does, excellent. But if it doesn't, we'll sure learn from it, and we'll make sure we kind of don't repeat again, or repeat with tweaks again. And then if it needs to be, let it go. So
yeah, great. I'm not seeing any more questions. I've tried to keep an eye on it to make sure that there are any more questions. Do you have any more questions, Elliot, that you want to ask me about startups or anything like that? I think we got about a minute left or so.
What's the best thing about working at a startup?
Besides the sushi bar?
Besides the sushi bar. Yeah.
Besides the sushi bar. To me, it's that just the pace at which things change and how fast, it's always different. I mean, I think that's the best thing for me, is that you are definitely doing something, if not day to day, week to week, that's different. You tackle one challenge and there's a next one that's right in your face. And we're very fortunate at Unibuddy that, we're growing at a great clip. And so that just brings, you finish one thing and you're on to the next thing. And I think that's what's really exciting about it. But that's also the challenge as well. We talked about how you kind of make sure you have that work-life balance. But I mean, it's just very inspiring, especially when you get to work at, because I've worked at different companies, especially when you get to work at, and I'm sure this is similar to working at a university, for an organization that you really believe in the mission. I mean, because when you really believe in the mission, then you're like gung-ho about just tackling the next challenge, because you can tie it back to you doing something really positive and having a positive impact.
Yeah, I think from a university point of view, when you kind of take everything away, it is more university kind of recruitment and outreach, which is what I look after. When you take everything away, all the kind of noise around what we do and that sort of side of things, it's the fundamental ability to make a difference to someone's life is what we're trying to do. And if you're able to do that, however you do it, whether it's via putting on events, activities, having a peer-to-peer chat system, whatever it could be, that is always, when I think about, sit back and think, why do I do this? It's very much that, which is nice.
Yeah, it's been great for me. I mean, I've never been involved in the education sector before, higher ed, anything like that. And, to see these, as we do these show and tells, these chats come in about students talking to each other, where, you can really see that an ambassador is sharing this information with this high schooler, as we say in the US, and it's really helping them. It's giving them confidence to make a decision. I mean, that's just so cool. And the way that universities like Leicester are empowering students is just it makes it all worth it, right? So anyway, that was a really cheesy way to end, but I really enjoyed our session. As everyone knows at Unibuddy, I'm a little bit of a cheese ball, but I really appreciate you doing this, Elliot. It's been great chatting with you. I hope everyone out there has enjoyed the session. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thanks for having me. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And on to the next marathon event of the Unibuddy conference. So take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye.